Welcome to No Breaks, a Formula One podcast from the No Dunks Inc. Classic Factory, proudly a part of the Athletic Podcast Network. Whether you're joining us live in the Slipstream team, here on YouTube seeing our beautiful new microphones, or listening to those beautiful new microphones on the podcast later, thank you very much. I'm your host, Trey Kirby. I'm joined today by our local F1 expert and a man who had the worst Labor Day of all time.
It was bad.
Graydon Gordian.
It was a real flub of a Labor Day. It's disappointing. There's only one a year. And you don't want to flub it. You want to nail it.
Big day. Always a big day. You want to have a big Labor Day performance. I mean, your Labor Day was so bad it was 5 tweets worth bad, ending in a Daniel Powder.
I know, I did.
Toughen the end on a Daniel Powder.
I just felt it was the only fitting ending to what was a really difficult series of days, riddled with just disease and car failure and an abject lack of barbecuing and just all the things that you want.
Not even a little bit of barbecuing.
Not even a little bit of barbecuing. I was thinking back on it and I was like, the inevitable Ferrari blunders of the weekend aren't even on the short list of things that went awry for me. Normally they're they're at the top of the list of things that went wrong this weekend, whatever Ferrari did in the race. They don't even make the short list this weekend. It's a disappointment.
That's a disappointment.
But you know what? Things are looking up because we're here together.
Oh, yeah. And you know it's going to be a classic. I don't know what national day it is today, but we're going to make sure it's a good one for you. We've also got our team principal here, JD, on the pit wall making the right calls.
Oh, that's not it. Uh-oh.
That's all right. I am. It's all right. We got a lot. We've been doing a lot of stuff around here at the Classic Factory, JD.
Crazy. Nice mic stands, guys.
Thank you.
How about these, huh?
Do me a favor. Hit the table for me.
All right, test it. We're testing the bumps.
Oh, man. That's so much better.
Wow.
Oh, great stuff. Porpoising was a big issue in Formula One early in the season. Here in the No Dunks Inc. Classic Factory, it's been table bumps. Table bumps are the porpoising of podcasts.
Yeah, for sure.
But hopefully with these new upgrades, things will be sounding super smooth in your ears and on your eyes. We got a race here, though, to talk about. An interesting race, a controversial race. I don't know. I think it was spiced up a little bit by some strategy calls. Talking about the Dutch Grand Prix, of course, but we'll start by talking about qualification. Went down on Saturday. I guess the big news out of this is that Max Verstappen did finish in P1, followed closely behind by Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. However, Max got a little bit of help from his teammate Sergio Perez. What stuck out to you, Graydon, from qualification?
So it was a good quali. It was fun. It was exciting, and it had a bit of drama to it because over the course of the 3 rounds, at first it didn't look like Ferrari was actually gonna challenge Max in particular, Red Bull in general, but Max in particular for pole. Mm-hmm. But then in Q3 they really started to show some real pace, which was exciting because certainly coming out of Q1 it didn't look like it was going to be close in the end. Look like it was going to be a formality. And then we ended up getting our closest pole finishing of the year. The controversy, I guess, is this suggestion that Sergio perhaps threw quali to gum up the works on everybody else who was running a lap. I personally don't think he did that. I just think that this happens far less often than people like to suggest it's happening. And 2, I think if you go back and look at the sector times, I just don't know that Merck was actually threatening for pole there. So I don't know. He's causing his mechanics a lot of work overnight for no for no good reason. So it's actually, it made me really excited for Sunday because I had thought, okay, yes, Max is lights out right now. He is going to be the world champion. He is batting 1,000 when it comes to his driving at this point. But this is a track that really favors the core design decisions behind the Ferrari, and Charles looks to have real pace here. Mm-hmm. He could have hooked up a lap that was better than Max's. He had a weak second sector comparatively. So the potential was there. He was right there. It looked like if they played their cards right, it could make for an entertaining Sunday. And we did have an entertaining Sunday for none of the reasons I just mentioned.
Exactly right. Yeah, other things transpired on Sunday to make it interesting. But you're right. Ferrari was looking pretty solid in qualifying. Both Leclerc and Sainz, I think, were within a tenth of a second of Max there in P1. Other notable results, Yuki Tsunoda qualified 8th. Mick Schumacher made it into Q1, qualified 9th, and Lance Stroll finished 10th. There's some names for you. Also interesting, Valtteri Bottas out after Q1 again, eliminated by his teammate Zhou Guanyu. Bottas is going to come up a little bit later when we're talking about surprises and disappointments. Has not been a great run for him, but that's quali. Let's talk about the race on Sunday. We'll start by taking a look at the top 10 points finishers. Up top, no surprise, it's Max Verstappen, though the way he got there, a bit interesting. He's followed by George Russell there, finishing second, and Charles Leclerc finishing third to round out the podium. They're followed by Hamilton in P4, Perez, Alonso, Norris, Sainz, Ocon in P9, and Lance Stroll getting that final point there for Aston Martin, coming in 10th. So the big story, Graydon from the weekend, Max Verstappen gets a win at the Dutch Grand Prix at home. We're seeing orange flares everywhere. If you're a fan of the color of orange like myself, it's a great weekend.
Wait, is orange your favorite color?
Oh, I'm an orange man.
Orange is my favorite color. I didn't know that.
Hey, man.
Yeah, it's a great choice of colors. This guy has great taste in colors. This guy has great taste in colors.
Yeah, so it was interesting. It was very orange. I liked Fernando Alonso after the race. He's just the first thing he said. It's very orange.
He calls it like he sees it. What
very orange out there. But Max did end up winning pretty handily. Unfortunately, we were a little bit robbed of a showdown between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, all thanks to Yuki Tsunoda and Valtteri Bottas. Graydon, what went on with AlphaTauri and then a little bit later Alfa Romeo?
Yeah,
as well?
so this is definitely a really weird sequence of events. At the time it all starts, right, we see, I believe at the time, Lewis is in first and George is in second, right, both on the hards, and Max is behind them. Yuki has...
I think when we start, it's Max is in the lead, right?
Right,
because Hamilton and Russell are both on a one-stop
because he
thing.
pits. Right. Yeah. That is correct. Max has yet to take his second stop.
Yes.
He is almost certainly going to stop a second time. It is not realistic for him to do a one-stopper on starting on the softs and then having moved to the mediums, which he did a second stint on. So we're all anticipating another Max pit stop. Yuki pulls over to the side, claims his tire is not fitted correctly.
Right.
And they tell him he can keep going. Everything's fine. He goes in. He comes back to the pits. They mess around with him for a bit. They're like messing with his seatbelt,
strapping
I guess.
him in.
Yeah, they say everything's fine. They send him back out there. He immediately says, guys, something is wrong. And they say, stop the car. So now the car stops out on track. There's a very brief sector yellow during that first time he stopped. This time, there is a virtual safety car. In that one lap window in between those two things, Charles very hilariously pits, missing the one opportunity for a short pit stop. And then after that, Max does pit to come in for mediums. And even despite the short pit stop, the Mercs stay out.
Yep.
And they take the lead. Correct? Is that right?
No, I think Max pits from the lead, right, during that that full virtual safety car, because Yuki came in the first time, they just flashed a yellow sector. I think that was lap 45, then lap 46 is when he comes in. They fix his seatbelts, put on a new tire, and then stop him right away on lap 46. So Verstappen pits from the lead. I think he gets hards, actually. And then Hamilton and Russell both get in and get medium. The thing is, though, that this pit stop saves Verstappen about 10 seconds compared to a normal pit stop. And at that time, we're thinking, is Hamilton going to be able to catch him? Because Hamilton's cruising on hards. He's looking good on hards in a one-stop thing. But it was still going to be like coming down to the last couple of laps.
You're right.
So they come back out.
I misspoke. You're correct. You're right.
It's confusing, man. I was going back and looking at it all today, trying to straighten everything out. So that's what happens. Verstappen basically, during the Yuki pit stops, saves about 10 seconds. That's
right. And now is on fresher tires. He's made his recent stop. He's in no worries at this point about his tires running out by the end of the race, whereas Hamilton is still cruising. Like I said, he's on hards, and the hard tire was his best tire during the race. Yeah.
So then lap 56 is the real problem when it all comes down to it. Valtteri Bottas spins out, stops, and it's a full safety car. Verstappen immediately pits for softs, but Hamilton stays out, moves into P1. Russell stays out for just a lap.
Just initially.
So it goes Hamilton P1, Russell P2, Verstappen P3. On the next lap around, Russell pits for softs, and then we got Hamilton on used mediums, new softs for Verstappen in P2, new softs for Russell in P3, and Leclerc at the same time also gets on some new softs.
Wait, at the risk of sounding dense or like adding to the confusion, wasn't Max behind them after the Yuki stop? Because wasn't he going to have to hunt them down? That's why they like didn't pit, right? Because they were ahead on the hards, and he was going to have to. Wasn't that right? I mean, gosh. Maybe we got to go back.
I think what's happening is that basically what's happening is Hamilton is trying to chase down Verstappen. And Hamilton has a tire advantage before all of this starts, right? Because he's on a one stop from the beginning. They started mediums and then went to hards.
Correct.
He's having a great time on the hard tire. And what we're thinking is by the last 5 or 6 laps, basically, Hamilton will have a chance to catch Verstappen because Verstappen's going to have to pit at some point because his medium tires are going. However, after the Yuki couple of pit stops and the Bottas safety car, now it's Hamilton in the front on used tires trying to hold off Verstappen behind him. That is
absolutely correct. That last part is absolutely correct. And then initially it looked as if they were going to have a scenario where George on the mediums in second. And Hamilton on the mediums in first, and they were going to have a gap there, and that was going to give Hamilton what they thought was going to be an opportunity to get away, maybe, and put a little breathing room between him and Max. Then you were going to have Max in third on the softs and Charles in fourth on the softs, and then, as you said, George pits on the second lap around where they have to because Valtteri has stopped on the main straight. They make everybody go through the pit lane on that one, and in that pit lane pass through, that's when George decides to make a quick pit stop and come back out. He loses one place just to Max. He doesn't lose the place to Charles, but now he is on softs, and what you subsequently see is everything kind of, as we saw with the finishing stats, you see Max overtake Lewis incredibly easily, George overtake Lewis almost by hitting him, and then Charles eventually overtake Lewis. And Lewis proceeds to be very, very upset about this and feels as if they've hung him out to dry for that. I actually, my hot take on this is that I don't think Mercedes screwed this up because I think they have no good options. I think they're like so stuck between a rock and a hard place here. Because let's walk through what their options are at this pit stop. You leave them both out there, and you've got them on mediums now. I guess they've gotten on the mediums, and they're
Verstappen is trailing in third at that time on brand new soft tires.
And Charles on brand new soft tires. Everybody was saying that, oh, you leave them out there in worst case you get second and third. I don't think that's worst case. I think there's a very real scenario where you get third and fourth.
3-4.
Because the softs were eating up the mediums in those last few laps. Definitely. I think it's completely plausible that Charles overtakes both of them as well. He didn't have a hard time overtaking Lewis. The only reason he didn't catch George is because George was on softs too. So I think that isn't a good, that's not a good option. Pitting Lewis for softs would put him behind, but would keep him behind Max.
Yeah.
Keep him behind Max. So that's not a good option. That, in the sense that Max is going to drive away. He doesn't have the faster car.
Right.
Because you've thrown away any chance at winning if you seed P1 at that time.
Sure. And that was Toto's explanation afterwards. He's like, we had to risk it to try and win by keeping track position in a place where it's kind of hard to overtake.
Yeah, 100%, because I don't think there's any really realistic scenario where on the exact same tires at the exact same level of freshness that Hamilton overtakes Max. The Red Bull's just faster. Yeah. The Red Bull's just faster.
Totally.
So it's just a really tough scenario. So in that instance, what were they going to do? Probably the optimal points strategy would have been switch them both onto softs and defend second and third.
Sure.
But that's so hard to make in real time. You're telling Lewis we're throwing away the win so you can defend second. He's not going to like that either. That's much easier to say in hindsight than it is in real time.
How about this, though? What if they both go in and pit for softs at the exact same time? They come out and Verstappen, I mean, they would have to pull some chicanery, no doubt about it. It would have to be Russell like backing up and going as slow as possible during the safety cars to make it so that Max can't get into the pits before the Mercedes does. Because if they're able to come out ahead of each other, at least you've got somebody in between, right? And that was the argument for keeping both Mercedes out. Yeah, it's most likely that Verstappen is going to be able to pass both of them, but he's for sure able to pass Hamilton, which we saw. It didn't even take a corner. It took one straight.
I mean,
he was gone.
Was nothing.
The theory, I guess, is if you keep them both out there, is that Russell is there to slow up Verstappen while Hamilton is getting his tires warming up. Because, I think this is about 12 laps, 11 laps left when the race finally restarted. He was finally starting to get his tires up to temperature and put in some decent lap times. Kind of by like 6 laps left. It took a little bit of time.
Once he got tire temp back in the tires, he was putting in lap times that were similar to Leclerc's ahead of him. So seemingly that would have been enough to defend the position. You do need some sort of gap there, right, to overtake. They had said on the broadcast you needed a second and a half in terms of lap time. That to me was blatantly false. People were not clearly overtaking people without being a second and a half faster. So I'm not exactly sure why that was their sense of that. But yeah, I mean that would have been the best thing for Lewis. That would have been the best thing for Lewis. But I think the most interesting thing about this is that it shows something about the team dynamic and the team strategy at Mercedes today compared to years prior, where if Valtteri Bottas was in that seat, I absolutely believe that's what they would have done.
They're keeping him in P2 as a blocker.
They didn't do that with George Russell, and it's, I think, because they have a different attitude about George Russell's ceiling and where he is in the championship, which is ahead of Lewis, and what he means to the future of the team, and they do not treat George as a guy who's there to facilitate Lewis's success in the same way that they did Valtteri. Yeah. So I think that's the most telling thing about it, is less, they did or didn't make the right call, as what it demonstrates about their priorities.
Yeah, I think it is pretty interesting that Russell's basically allowed to make his own calls on the pit, because that's what happened. He got on the radio and said, these ain't working. We need to try the soft tire. And they were receptive to that. And like you're saying, in the past, if it's Bottas, they probably don't even give him the option to make that call because they're trying to get Lewis ahead. But I think you really hit on what the key to the entire strategy talk is that if you're on a one-stopper and there's a safety car in the last 10 laps of the race, your strategy's out the window. And you really don't have a chance. We were texting that day. It's no different than what happened with Leclerc and Sainz at Silverstone. Well, they pitted Sainz from P2, but they kept Russell out there because he was in front, and they're like, our best chance right now is staying in front and hoping that he can play a little defense, but the tires are too big of a deal.
In my only, this is, we always say things like this. The only difference to me is that the Ferrari decision at Silverstone is less defensible, per usual. It's almost as if Ferrari has made the because actually when you look at the timing gaps, when you go back and look at them, you look at where Leclerc was, he probably would have at most sacrificed one position while having been on the much fresher tires than the person who overtook him. He would have still won the race probably had you just pitted him, whereas you left him out to dry. In this instance, that's not true. It's like if you give up the position, like the other people behind him would have had to go without pitting to pass him. In this instance, that's not true. Lewis would have just not been P1. So I think it's more defensible what Mercedes did in the Netherlands than what Ferrari did in England, although they are similar. And they ended similarly for Leclerc and Hamilton. P4,
exactly
right? They got eaten up, right? So
yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, Leclerc was furious on the radio, just like Hamilton was, because, I mean, if you're in P1 and you see your teammate pit, and then as soon as you start racing, you're getting passed by everybody.
Yeah.
There's no wonder that Toto was called. I think Toto said that the radios make the pit wall the vomit bags of Formula One, which is just an incredible line. It's like, you'll say anything during a race when you're heated, and no doubt Hamilton was, because who knows if they'll be able to actually put together a win during this season. That was the race that that was their best chance yet. No doubt.
It was their best chance yet, but I'm actually very bullish on their ability to get a win, because I think they looked genuinely fast. To me, they looked the equivalent of the Ferraris, at least. The cars are built very differently, so they're going to perform differently in different scenarios. But the Red Bull is the fastest car out there at this point, period. Yep. It is now a step up ahead of the other two. But Ferrari and Merc are in the same kind of zone at this point, with setup and track conditions are going to vary performance across the two of them. And I just think that with the strategic sophistication of the Mercedes organization, which I do think is generally making very good, smart heads-up calls, they will be in a position to take advantage of any error that Red Bull makes. Red Bull could, of course, just pitch a shutout from here on out. They're the best car. They could just nail it and be confident and do everything. It's every race is theirs to lose from here on out for all intents and purposes. But I think if they make any mistake, if there's any crack in the door, Mercedes will be there to walk through it. So I think you're probably right. I think they've got a chance.
They've definitely improved this season, whereas Ferrari has kind of come back from Red Bull to the point where now it's like we've got a clear number one in Red Bull. And I think Ferrari and Mercedes at this point are kind of fighting for number two, and they certainly are in the standings as well. What did you make about the criticism of Yuki Tsunoda and Valtteri Bottas, since they're kind of affiliated teams, helping out Red Bull more so than
I don't see the Valtteri one. I think that was just bad luck, right? Alpha's not throwing races for RB, but also I don't think Valtteri, I don't know, but I don't see the Yuki one. That to me is, listen, I just don't buy it. I mean, I think it's like it would require so much. To the idea that you would actually go to all those elaborate lengths, which, by the way, things of that nature have ruined guys' careers when they have found out to have actually done things along those lines. It's for a guy who's in first currently. I don't know. It's like I just don't. It's why the risk is not worth the reward to me.
Agree.
Like Max is crushing the championship. Like the worst case scenario of that race, I guess, is he gets second. Like to look like it's like there's just no stakes here that are worth throwing. So it just seems to me like that would be an insane moment to roll out such an elaborate conspiracy.
Yes.
I just think it was like idiot. I just think they blew it. I just think they were being dumb and they sent the car out and Yuki, the data wasn't reading correctly. Yuki was like, something's wrong, but they didn't want to stop in the pit lane because stopping in the pit lane has its own dangers and risks. And they wanted to get him out on the track to stop somewhere safe because you don't want, and that was what happened.
Yeah, it was just a combination of factors, being that AlphaTauri and Red Bull obviously have a relationship between the two teams. It was a weird stoppage in general. Like, you don't often see a driver pull over to the side of the road and say, my wheel doesn't fit, and then take off his seatbelt, and then they come in, they're like, actually, your wheel's totally fine. Wait, no, it isn't totally fine. The circumstances of the stop were very strange, and maybe something weird was just happening, but all I could think of, no doubt, was driven. It was unbelievable to me because, when Joe Tonto makes his return to the kart championship, they use him as a blocker out of the pits.
Yeah, I mean,
to get Jimmy Bly a win.
Honestly, it's hard.
It's
hard to see these races and not think of Driven, and not just see all the parallels and find all the moments where art imitates life and life imitates art, and it's like they're like these races in Driven are like it's like two mirrors facing each other.
I was just so
off
happy
into infinity
that we had watched it recently to have a frame of reference, because I remember asking on that podcast, like, has anything like this ever happened? You're like, no, that would be ridiculous. And then it does happen similar, not too much later. So, bummer though. It would have been cool to see Verstappen and Hamilton duking it out in the last couple of laps.
You know what was a little bit actually. Speaking of Driven, which I know we're always happy.
Yeah.
You know what was a little bit more similar to the Joe Tonto nonsense in that one thing was when Sebastian Vettel came out of the pits and didn't heed the blue flag quickly enough. That was when we were talking about the show. When we were talking about Driven, I had said, well, the problem would be is you'd get quickly shown a blue flag and you'd need to let the other people by. You're not supposed to hold them up in this instance. But Sebastian kind of did, so he did. So that was actually, I think, fairly similar to that scene.
He definitely had a bit of a flashback to like 2018 when it was Vettel, Verstappen, and Hamilton battling it out for the championship. He's like, I'm getting in a race here just for a little bit. They're like, get out of the way, Joe, Tonto.
Yeah.
We got to talk about Ferrari. Leclerc, a weird race, I thought, in that he was like, he obviously finished on the podium, finished P3. He was in the top like 2 to 4 for the majority of the race, and they never showed him or talked about him because they knew he's not the race here. Like, he's just out there. He was like what Lewis Hamilton was at the beginning of the season. Like, you're probably going to be coming in you're probably coming in 3rd or 4th here, and you're not really fighting for the actual top.
I think when you
just
looked at their pit strategies and then you started rolling them out, it's like, okay, he actually doesn't have a path to the podium until things went awry, and then suddenly he did. But they're and honestly, if they had nailed the Yuki mess up, there's probably even a world where he finishes P2.
Sure.
I don't think a win was really in the cards for him at that point. But I think that, they're, it's definitely, he just had a boring race. He was not the story of the race for Ferrari.
Right.
It was Carlos Sainz.
Which was your favorite Carlos Sainz pit stop? The time where they forgot the wheel, or the time where he sped out and almost hit some people?
Okay, so that's a great question. And tough call, because they're both really great and special in their own way. I'm going to go with the wheel one only because it feels like there's only I get pit stops are fast and they're complicated and it's this really intricate ballet to get these cars in and out of the pit in under 3 seconds. But there's only a few things you got to remember to bring with you, and 4 wheels are one of them. Like, you got to remember all 4 of the wheels. So it's like that. It feels to me that like that's something you're gonna wanna remember.
You're gonna want all 4.
You're gonna want all 4. And like, one guy's entire job is like have that wheel. And it's not just that he okay, in his defense, he did remember the wheel. He just went to the wrong part of the car. He was like over on. Did you see on the replay? He was like on like the front right side when he was the back left wheel, I think. Which I don't even know. I guess he was gonna loop around or something. I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know what was going on. But as Ferrari admitted, it was a mess, and I just
Yes.
I don't know what's going on, man. That was a new one. People screw up pit stops all the time.
Oh yeah.
And listen,
yeah.
I'm not trying to roast anybody too hard for blowing a pit stop. These things happen, but that was a somewhat unique way to blow the pit stop.
Oh, definitely. If you go to Tires Plus after we're done recording here, they're giving you 4 new tires. You can't even get 2 new tires if you're going to a tire
in the shop
shop
right now. I fully expect it to come back with 4 tires. If it doesn't, I'm going to be upset and I'm going to be confused.
And you're going to be waiting a little bit longer while they get the 4th one out there. That was crazy.
As
to
Carlos
see.
Sainz was, and then the release was also ridiculous. It was so obviously dangerous. There was really no excuse for it. Carlos's insistence over the radio that it was not dangerous. He saw it, and it was. I saw it.
I saw the cameras.
I saw it on the cameras, and it was not dangerous. So I guess what he is saying is there's huge TV screens around the circuit, and he drove by one, and they were showing the replay of that.
Quick peek.
And he at whatever, I guess, safety car speeds, I guess at that point still, I think they were, or were they under, I forget whether they were,
who knows?
I forget whether they're under green flag or still under safety car when he made that comment, but he apparently saw and, and said, don't worry, it's fine.
Don't worry, it's fine.
But the
totally
stewards
safe release.
disagreed, as did literally every other person who saw it with their eyes. It was inarguably an unsafe release.
Yeah, he was just sticking to his guns on that one. I mean, I got out totally fine. Sure, I almost got in a huge wreck, but still.
I appreciate his willingness to,
lie.
Just lie. Yeah, lie.
You got to. Sometimes you got to.
Yeah.
It's like when the guy brought out the 4th wheel. He's like, yeah, I knew where to go.
Yeah, totally.
Why were you standing at the front?
No, that was bad. That was a blunder on their end. Nico Rosberg said it after the race. He was like, at this point, it's like you're just waiting for these things to happen. Yes. I think is the words he used. It's like these things really have become when, not ifs for Ferrari, and that's insane. It's insane how predictable some sort of Ferrari blunder on a race-by-race basis is. Something has to change. They've got to make some changes.
But it is exciting, to not know what kind of a blunder it's going to be, because when you see a guy forget a wheel. It's just exciting.
Just
Not dissimilar to like I guess it was Monaco last year where Bottas's wheel got stuck on and they just kept like smacking the gun into it.
Yeah.
Come on, this thing ain't working. But it really ended up costing Carlos Sainz. Obviously the slow pit stop was bad, and then picking up a 5-second penalty for an unsafe release, ended up finishing P8. But that's the top three. Basically teams right there. So what about surprises and disappointments from the rest of the Dutch Grand Prix?
Okay, surprises. I mean, a couple nice ones. I don't say a lot of fawning things about Lance Stroll, but good for him for getting up into the points.
There we go.
There, it's like good
Lance.
for him. Good for him for getting up there into the points. That was nice.
Started 10th, finished 10th.
yeah.
Anytime he scores points, always comes in 10th.
Always.
I like that consistency.
Yeah, absolutely knows his target and he hits it. I think that, I mean, I don't know. The rest of I think you've got to look at, I don't want to say it's not a surprise that George Russell is on the podium. It's not a surprise that he's in second, although that is actually his best result of the season, oddly enough. It's just that, but I think there is just, I am a little bit surprised at how well he is performing so consistently. His championship medal is on display. Like, if and when they figure out the car, he will be right up there with Charles and Max and whoever the lead drivers are for the top teams fighting for these titles. I genuinely believe that because he clearly has got the stuff. He's so consistent. He's so opportunistic, like in a good way, right? He just is finding a way to get on these podiums, get in these top fives, get these points. It's really impressive. So at this point, it's wrong to call it surprising because I've coming to expect it, but I still am very impressed, I'll say. On the disappointment side of things, I
like it. You timed your point perfectly with disappointments. Hit me with the disappointment here.
I mean, it's another disappointing weekend for AlphaTauri, right?
Yes.
It's like Gasly didn't look good. Yuki was a hot mess. The team itself sent a car on track that probably shouldn't have been driving around. And like top to bottom, it's like they had a messy weekend. So I think they've got to be number one on my list of people whom I'm disappointed in.
I will add Valtteri Bottas. His third straight retirement for Bottas. 6
fair.
races without points.
Good addition.
He's out in Q1 in back-to-back races after I think it was 148 straight Grand Prix that he advanced past Q1. And like he said after the race, he's probably getting grid penalties coming up here in Monza because his engine caught on fire, which, that's a good way to know that your engine is maybe not going to hold up for the next race.
Yep.
So I would add that. And yeah, I mean, Russell's having an incredible season right now. He's 4th in the Drivers' Championship. Here's a surprise for you. Only 19 points behind Charles Leclerc for P2. That's a real race coming down the finale here.
If you look at this is Charles's first podium since Austria, I think.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So it's very reasonable that he could somehow finish ahead of Sergio, ahead of Charles, ahead of these, which is crazy. If 5 races into the season, after Australia, when Leclerc won walking away, and you had said, hey, Russell's going to be ahead of him by the end of the season, I'd be like, that's the dumbest prediction I've ever heard in my life. Would have thought it was insane. It would be a crazy thing to say.
Yeah,
but it's very real.
We shall see. That could be the most exciting race in the championship because Verstappen's got this thing sewn up. It's just a matter of time before he ends up winning it. But the race for P2 is certainly still alive. We only got one thing left to do with regards to the Dutch Grand Prix, and that's hand out our full beans driver of the weekend. It goes to the driver who gave it their all out there during the course of the 3-day weekend. Graydon, who are you giving your beans?
Okay, this is going to sound a bit odd because he had what, in his eyes, was an incredibly frustrating, disappointing day. But I'm going to give it to Lewis.
Okay.
You know why? Because I think Lewis drove a terrific race.
Yeah.
Like, he hooked it up. He looked great. He was absolutely maximizing the potential of every stint he did out there. And I believe before the Valtteri stop, I think he was going to win the race. I actually think he had the pace on the tires. He was in position. He wasn't done. It wasn't a done deal. He had to still overtake Max. He had to make the move. But I think they had hooked it up. They had figured it out. They were gonna win, and I think that was gonna be awesome. I think he did all the things right. So while he ended up off the podium, which obviously is very disappointing, I just think you've got to look at what Lewis did out there and be like, that was damn good racing. That was the sort of elite level stuff that we expect from a guy who has won as many championships as he has.
I love it. I think that's a great call, and I think you're right. And I think that Hamilton would even agree, because after that first Yuki pit stop where they double stack the Mercedes and they both get on to softs, he's like fired up on the radio. He's like, great pit stops, guys. Let's go. Let's get this. You can tell he's still confident they got a chance to win it there. The Bottas safety car comes not too soon after. And the tenor changed on the radio for Lewis a little bit there. But he was great this weekend, no doubt about it. Things transpired that he didn't end up on the podium, which is a disappointment. My full beans driver of the weekend, I got to go Fernando Alonso here.
Yeah, I like that pick.
Because I think he kind of inspired the Mercedes to go to hard tires, because Alonso pitted pretty early. He was the first guy into the pits, went to the hard tire, and it was working great for him. It's 10 straight races now that Alonso has finished in the points. And it's basically between him and Norris who's going to finish best of the rest in every single race. So another shout out to Fernando Alonso. Hilarious to see him keep racking up points for Alpine here, knowing that he's going to be leaving at the end of the season. But that's probably the way he likes it.
Another great weekend for Alpine, 2 guys in the points.
Totally.
I think they're starting to really solidify their hold on fourth. Obviously, it's been a clunky few weeks for them, but on track, they're starting to really make it happen.
On track, they're on track, no doubt about it. But we want to hear from you, so let us know on Twitter, down below in the comments, who's your full beans driver of the weekend. Any surprises, disappointments, or anything we missed from the Dutch Grand Prix. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, going to talk some news and play gas or brakes.
So there might be a destination wedding on my calendar soon. A friend of Roxana's getting married. Possibly trying to make it happen on the coast of Colombia somewhere. Jose and Maria. Not the most Latin-sounding names, are they? Jose and Maria getting married there. But hopefully they'll lock in the details soon, because wherever it happens, it's going to be a pretty formal affair. And I'm going to need a new suit. And we all know that finding the perfect suit, that is impossible. But finding a suit that's perfect for you is actually quite simple, thanks to Indochino. I've already had a shirt from Indochino, fantastic one, a while ago now, still a banger, still bring it out on special occasions. And what I loved about my experience with Indochino was just how easy it was to order online.
It's true.
Very hard to get clothes online, formal clothes, get the measurements right, get the fit right, get the color, the look, all that sort of stuff. Indochino, though, does do a fantastic job of that. And so, having gotten the shirt, I feel confident that I can get the whole suit online.
Let me ask. Yeah. So you did your measurements for your shirt?
Yes.
Are you going to do a redo of the? I'm just wondering.
What are you saying there, Tassie? No, yeah, of course. I think it's important to just freshen them up, make sure they're still the same.
Okay. So you got to do your legs now.
Got to do the inner and the outer. Got to do the hip, the waist.
I think you got to even measure like around your thigh.
Yeah, I think so.
Very
too.
Cool.
I think so.
I need to know your thigh size.
Well, whatever happens though, I feel once you put all those details into the Indochino website, you're going to come out with a suit that suits and fits and does everything that you want it to do, which is very important, because you can shop for their made-for-you suits starting at only $449 and premium fitted shirts at just $89. That's fantastic. Because you're at a wedding, you don't want to steal the limelight from the people getting married, but you don't want to look shabby either.
So true.
You want to look great. I mean, Trey was at a wedding just recently, looked $1 million.
Yeah, but luckily the groom looked like $1,001.
That's exactly right.
Thanks to Indochino.
Yeah. You can fine-tune every detail, lapels, linings, monograms, and more. Design your perfect suit with Indochino. To get $50 off any purchase of $399 or more, use promo code NODUNKS at Indochino.com. That's INDOCHINO.com. Promo code NODUNKS.
Back with no breaks. We've been talking about Oscar Piastri for a month now, pretty much.
Longer, maybe.
For a long time. His contract situation between the Alpine team and the McLaren team. We finally got a decision from the CRB over the weekend, and guess what? He's going to McLaren, buddy.
Is.
Going to be a young team in 2023. Lando Norris.
I like it, though.
And Oscar Piastri. Are you surprised it turned out this way, or does it just kind of seem like Alpine botched the signatures?
I'm not surprised it turned out this way. Nothing I had heard coming out of a combination of two things, like McLaren's quiet confidence about the whole situation made me think they had this locked down, and B, Alpine's statements, while insisting that they still had him under contract, always felt very tepid. It seemed as if they knew they had blown it and they had gotten caught in the scenario. So it's like I'm not surprised that this is how it turned out. I would have been more surprised if they had forced Oscar to drive for a team he didn't want to drive for. That would have been more shocking.
I was listening to Shift F1 today, and they got a great breakdown of the timeline of the way contract stuff went poorly for Piastri and Alpine. Basically, what it comes down to is there was a term sheet that was agreed upon, but a term sheet ain't a contract.
Term sheet ain't a contract.
It's like the Flight of the Conchords say, a kiss is not a contract, nor is a term sheet, especially when the term sheet says you need to sign a contract for this to be valid. So we'll see Piastri with McLaren next season, and the other Alpine seat is still up for grabs as of right now, which brings us to gas or brakes. Gas or brakes. Take a look at that beautiful Sting in our favorite colors there, Graydon. Orange, of course. Look at these moves this guy has.
It's like a little jam there. It's like a little fun.
I'm loving it. Our first gas or brakes. Talking about Colton Herta, another name who's come up quite a bit here during silly season. Negotiations are still continuing with Colton Herta possibly joining an F1 team. He's been linked to AlphaTauri since Pierre Gasly has been linked to Alpine. As we discussed last week, he does not yet have his super license, which is required to drive in Formula One. I saw you tweeting back and forth with former guest Hazel Southwell about the differences between IndyCar and F2 and the way they are scored with regards to the super license points. So, Graydon, gas or brakes? You think Colton Herta will be in Formula One next season?
I'm hitting the brakes on this. I would love to hit the gas because I want Colton Herta to be in the series. I think it'd be fun. I'd also love for Pierre to get a fresh start over at Alpine. So I'd love the domino effect that this would cause. But everything I'm seeing out of the FIA right now, all the little birds that are chirping out there, suggests that their inclination is not to grant him the force majeure exception that he would need to not have, to skip the super license points. He's only got 32. He needs 40 super license points to gain an F1 license. And I don't think they're going to give it to him. I don't think he's going to get it. And maybe that's right in the sense that he doesn't have the super license points and there is a system and there are rules. But at the same time, I think it is unjust because, as I was talking with Hazel about, I think the IndyCar super license points are a joke. They're way too low. They're way too low, embarrassingly low. For third and after, you get more super license points. You get more super license points for placing fourth in F3 than you do for fourth in Indy. I think that's insane. F3 is like a bunch of 17-year-olds racing around. IndyCar is the top open wheel racing series in North America. These are really hyper talented pros, ex F1 drivers who come in and are middle of the pack. It's these guys are mega talents. I think the FIA is not showing IndyCar enough respect, and for all intents and purposes, they should have a point structure where Colton Herta should easily be able to get in. But the truth is he doesn't, and from what I'm seeing right now, they're not inclined to make an exception here.
They're not going to bend over backwards for a guy who hasn't raced in any of their formulas, basically.
I think they're too worried about the feeder system, right? Sure. It's going to erode confidence and interest for the larger teams to invest in Formula 2 and Formula 3 and for people to want to put their guys there if they're saying, oh, you can come in just from wherever. But this reminds me of kind of weird... It reminds me of NBA, NCAA stuff versus Europe or other, leagues or things like that. Half of it to me, it doesn't feel the NCAA is the best breeding ground for NBA talent. Half the time it feels to me like it's about control.
Sure. Not
actually about the most open and accessible and effective way of identifying talent. Like, so that I'm not a fan of the way this is all going down, but breaks on the yes or no question.
He probably won't be here.
That's what I
next
think.
season.
That's
Well,
what I think.
He seems to be in demand as well. So, I mean, I guess that keeps a seat open. Is there any way he can acquire super license points between now and the start of next season?
Okay, so, I mean, he would need to... I don't think he can make it up really in the IndyCar Championship. It's a really competitive one this year, and the top of the standings are really tight, so it doesn't look like he can do that. He can do practice sessions. He can do things like that get you extra points. There are some questions around his Indy Lights, time, and would he, in particular, is that they're not okay. So this is the one. I think his best argument is when he competed in Indy Lights, they didn't give him. They're not granting him points for that period because not enough teams were racing, and not enough teams were racing to meet the minimum requirements that they grant the points. And not enough teams were racing because of COVID, apparently. I believe that's the case. So the force majeure argument is he would have the points if it weren't for a global pandemic. That is my understanding of the situation. And that's their best argument is that he would have the points if it weren't for COVID because more teams would have participated in this. So it doesn't seem like their inclination is to buy that right now.
There's a lot of drivers that want seats, so I can understand why they wouldn't be breaking the rules for some guy that hasn't been through the system.
Yeah,
point,
and
unfortunately.
Stefano Domenicali, the CEO of F1, didn't seem inclined to do it. Apparently the conversations he's had with the FIA, their interest in is minimal. It seems like Red Bull's pushing for it. I don't know, maybe Red Bull has a lot of sway and Red Bull makes huge investments in Formula 2 and Formula 3. So it's not as if they're interested in deconstructing those series. I don't know. I just don't buy it. I don't see it.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned getting super license points for doing practices because our next little bit of news is actually non-F1 racing news. 4 female drivers, Abby Pulling, Chloe Chambers, Teresa Babikova, and Hamda Al-Kabaisi will be taking part in a Formula 3 test in France later this month. I think this is the second time they've had women drivers doing a Formula 3 test. So, Graydon, gas or brakes, will we ever see a female driver in Formula 1?
Oh, gas on that. I think
Gas
we will.
it up, baby.
We will get there, I think, one day. And I'm excited that these women are getting a chance to do this Formula 3 test. It's great. They're big talents. They deserve a chance. But there is an asterisk here, which is that I wish it wasn't a Formula 3 test. I wish it was a Formula 2 test, an F2 test, because the W Series cars and the F3 cars are already pretty similar.
Okay.
We're not actually, in my opinion, getting a meaningfully better sense of their ability as drivers by shifting them across those two cars. An F2 car, you would start to see how they're performing with a little bit more pace and a little bit performance in the vehicle. So that's what I wish they were doing. It's still valuable because you're kind of getting them in that main feeder series where they have more visibility and they're in they're getting time in the cars that are inevitably leading to people being in F1, because right now we haven't seen people go from the W Series into F1, not immediately, but after any series of steps. So, my hope would be that this helps get cross-pollinate those series a little more, but we'll have to see.
Well, that's what Stefano Domenicali said. Providing more opportunities for women drivers across single-seater racing is a key priority for all of us at Formula One and across the whole sport. So, yeah, very cool to see them getting a chance at least in F3. Hopefully they'll give them some chances, in the bigger, more notable promotions. And what's her name? Jamie Chadwick?
Yeah,
she's like the best.
That's where we need to... At the end of the day, this is... Okay, my cynical take on all this is this is all nice and well and good, and these women should absolutely get a chance to test these cars. But we've got the driver. Jamie Chadwick is right there. She is a superstar. She is so fast. Put her in a real car. Let her do F1 testing. Put her in Formula 2. Somebody back her, and let's see what she can do. To me, it feels too much. The rest of it feels too much like I'm going to say lipstick on a pig, but it's just not,
they could be doing more.
It smacks of being PR moves rather than real efforts to better integrate the sport, integrate women into the sport. Because Jamie Chadwick is sitting right there waiting on a drive.
2-time champ, if I'm not mistaken, in the W Series.
She's awesome in the W Series. Totally.
Well, hopefully she'll get a chance as well and maybe kick some guys' asses. That'd be cool to see. Our next gas or brakes, Graydon. F1 debuted some new racing graphics in Zandvoort. Live graphics here, which basically show the time and distance between cars when they are getting ready to do their overtakes. So gas or brakes, Graydon, on these new live overtaking graphics, I think maybe you would call them?
Can I just do more of like a lift and coast here?
A lift and coast?
I mean, it's like kind of cool. I actually like it more what we're seeing right now, where they're seeing the distance is interesting.
Yeah.
And the time gap is a little bit interesting, but I don't think these are as illuminating as they make them out to be. I mean, I can kind of tell that. I mean, I can see that the car's in front of him and he's behind it. I just don't know what I'm learning in this. I don't know.
Lift and coast. I think that's fair. I agree. I like the distance more than I like the time, because the time just seems made up to me. Even when they show the the AWS Leclerc will be approaching Verstappen in 2 laps, I'm like, you're lying to me. I know you're using your estimates, but things change.
Yeah,
and you can see it changing, like the time's changing there. But I do also like just seeing the driver ahead's name, so you can know exactly which of the couple of drivers from each team they're following.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like I can tell whether the car is further ahead, whether they are gaining on it or losing on it. I have like depth perception. I could see, there's perspective, the TV allows for kind of...
You got 3D TV?
Yeah. I got my glasses on. It's coming right at me. No, it's like so I don't know. It just... I do actually generally like F1's graphics, though, and appreciate that they're always like trying to think of new ways to... I would rather them try things that I'm meh on than not try anything at all. I want them to be exploring new ways to share data with us and inform us about what's happening on track.
This was better to me than I think last season they did just the graphics from the nose cam, when it was just here's how fast they're going, but we put it on the ground instead of giving you a fake heads up display. This was better than that to me, but quick gas or brakes, 3D TVs.
I think I'm brakes.
You think you're brakes? I think everybody's brakes.
I'm brakes.
We don't hear much about 3D TVs.
But I was also never big in our most recent 3D movie craze, 7-8 years ago when that came back, the Avatar era. I wasn't that into those either. I just didn't enjoy them that much. I'm fine with...
I love a 3D movie. I love the idea of going to a movie...
And they're coming
and it's
out
an event, you get your cool horn rim glasses, chuck them into the garbage afterwards. That's fine with me, but...
What about movies with other sensory inputs, shaking or smell-o-vision, or other things that are making it more real for you?
I do love...
Yeah.
I love the Jaws ride when you get all scared
exactly.
and the big animatronic shark comes up. I do love that. Yeah. Major gas on that one. What about you, JD? You like a 3D movie or a 3D TV?
I'm 100% out on
any
the brakes. Any 3D gives me a headache.
Yeah, it gives me a headache.
And it's darker. It's somehow you're wearing sunglasses in the theater.
Yeah, not quite as vibrant.
Yeah, and so, I don't like it. So
the only one that I ever saw that I really liked was Wim Wenders' Pina Bausch movie. If you guys saw this, now we're getting into weird artsy-fartsy film stuff. But he did a nice job with adding depth to the stage, whatever. If you are like me and you enjoy Pina Bausch and the Tons Theater of Wuppertal, tweet at me. We can talk about it later.
On the next film session. We got a break coming up here after the next race. We got 3 weeks. I guess we're gonna watch.
We'll talk about dance in the 20th century.
Pina Bish?
If you want to get on dance Twitter.
Pina Bish?
Pina Bausch.
Pina Bausch, of course. I should have known. Well, speaking of vibrant, JD, last bit of news: Ferrari is going yellow in Monza. Saw yesterday Ferrari dropping a whole bunch of new gear featuring bright yellow instead of their classic red look. It's for the 75th anniversary of the Scuderia, bringing it out for Monza. yet to be determined, Graydon. I think they're actually releasing the livery today. If they're going to be going like full yellow or just a little bit of yellow trim
It's
on
like
it.
a yellow tail thing. They did tweet that earlier.
Yeah, okay.
It's got like like the back third has a big yellow chunk, but
It's
it's
more
not full yellow.
but not a full yellow. I
It's
think
not
they've only
full
had a
yellow.
full yellow like one time in Formula One history. Ferrari has.
Yeah,
What do you think about this though? Gas or brakes? Ferrari in yellow.
This might surprise people, but I'm gas on this.
This looks great.
Okay. I'm glad you're with it. I think it's not bad. I hate Ferrari's apparel. I feel like they blow it all the time. Like they have a super cool brand identity. They have a cool logo. They could do cool stuff, and they do like whack things constantly. So whenever they do something that is just like they hit a double on the clothing, a little no bunts, like not a wink there.
There you go.
I think I'm like, great job, guys. You like this is wearable. Thank you for I'm not even looking for them to put out like fire fits. I'm looking for wearable apparel.
gear.
Because some of the stuff I constantly look on their store and I'm like, I can't wear any of this. I can't buy any of this.
I could see you pulling off that pair of jeans that Charles Leclerc was wearing earlier in the year where you zipped off the sides and they were also somehow track pants at the same time. I could see you pulling that off.
Yeah.
But yeah, this looks cool.
They're good.
Yellow is a surprisingly great sports color.
Yeah, I agree. And it is like it is a really classic color for them. It was what I believe Enzo Ferrari wanted their color to be originally, but there were just actual regulations around race car colors and red back in like 1920s, 30s Italy. So it has a special place in Ferrari lore. It's not just totally out of left field. And I'm into it. I think it's not so bad.
I think you could probably see a yellow Ferrari driving around Atlanta somewhere. I bet somebody around here has one.
You know what it
These are
also
cool.
helps with is it's one of the few. It helps better integrate the Shell logo into the apparel, which is always a real eyesore on all of their clothing. It's always super awkward and just slapped on there. And in this instance, it's inherently more subtle.
Yeah, that's true. It blends in a little bit
Yeah.
there, but we want to hear from you, so let us know down in the comments if you're gas or brakes on any of these topics, and if you've seen the movie Pina Bausch. And if it's the the greatest 3D movie of all. People are saying, this from Greg, wow, Graydon is really a true Renaissance man on an F1 podcast talking about Pina Bausch.
It's Bausch. God, it's embarrassing.
All right.
I'm gonna hear so
Ads,
much.
please.
I'm gonna get crushed
Ads,
on
please.
dance Twitter for this.
We have partnered with BetterHelp to make this classic podcast. Think of how much care goes into a major league pitcher maintaining their arm health. The rest and rehabilitation is almost as important as the performance. That's how our brains work, so why don't we treat them that way? How we care for our minds affects how we experience life, so it's important to invest time and care into keeping them healthy. There are plenty of ways to support a healthy brain, like learning a new language or taking power naps, but there's also BetterHelp online therapy. BetterHelp is online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat-only therapy sessions. So you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. Right now, our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/nodunks. That's betterhelp.com/nodunks for 10% off your first month. Back with No Breaks, the #1 Pina Bausch podcast on Earth, I will say.
There's gotta be. No, there doesn't.
There's modern dance podcasts.
There's modern dance podcasts, and I assure you, they talk about her work on there. She was a very influential choreographer. She was.
I believe you.
Yeah,
what
was.
would you say is one of your favorite moves that she does?
There's
Let's see it.
yeah, I mean, she has. We could talk about this. We'll watch the movie.
Okay.
As
good.
I was just saying, we're not going to do a film session on it because I think it's got to be. There's nothing funny about it. It's not. It's like a terrible movie for that. But we can get together and watch it.
All right, that sounds good. I look forward to constantly referencing it for the entirety of this season as we finish things out here. And speaking of finishing things out here, this weekend will be the last leg of our triple header going down in Italy. But first, let's take a quick look at the updated drivers and constructors standings. You see it up top, Max Verstappen, a commanding lead in the driver's standings. It's just a matter of time before he actually clinches the championship. He's got a 109-point lead over both Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez, tied with 201 points there in P2 and P3, though Leclerc is ahead because he's won more races, I think.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah. So we got George Russell in P4, very consistent all year, followed by Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, best of the rest in P7. He's followed by Esteban Ocon in P8 and Fernando Alonso P9. And Valtteri Bottas hanging on to P10. It's a little bit of a surprise to me, actually, when you see it in the standings. As for the team, Red Bull way ahead, 511 points. They're going to win the Constructors' Championship. They're followed by Ferrari, 376 points, just 30 points ahead of Mercedes in P3. In P4, we've got Alpine, followed by McLaren, Alfa Romeo, Haas, AlphaTauri, Aston Martin getting those 1 points from Lance Stroll, and Williams bringing up the rear. 4 points on the season, but we'll just call it 10th place. That sounds nice. Last year in Monza, bit of a surprise. Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris took home the McLaren 1-2, ended up getting Zach Brown a tattoo out of it. Valtteri Bottas finished P3 for Mercedes. This was after both Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton crashed out in one of their many, many crashes during the 2021 season. Graydon, this track is a classic. I saw this is the third track on Earth built specifically for racing after some track and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Then we got Monza, the Temple of Speed.
Well, yeah, we got to first of all we got to look up what the first one was.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is.
I forgot. I mean, it's on the F1 website. It's not like I'm going deep for this information here. I just forgot.
Well, it's okay.
Pina Bausch in
I forgot what order the drivers
out.
were racing in during the race, so it's worst things to forget.
So this is a fasty.
It is an incredibly fast track, probably the lowest downforce setup of the year for everyone. The least rear wing people are going to be running.
Toto said they're taking theirs off.
I mean, you see people run really, really small rear wings, right? Like just so minimal. And that because they're optimizing for straight line speed over and above everything. That doesn't mean that it's a simple track to drive because you also have an incredibly fast-paced corner at the final corner, the Parabolica, which we talked about last week.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, means that you have to take an incredibly fast-paced, basically 180 corner with minimal downforce. So it doesn't mean that it's easy to manage. And certainly that first chicane is also very complicated to manage with minimal downforce. Really hard to nail the braking zone there. It's not an easy track, but it is one that favors engine power and straight line speed, which is probably why Ferrari and Mercedes and everybody are a little bit disappointed they didn't get a win in the Netherlands or anywhere else, because this definitely feels like a weekend where Red Bull should be the favorite going in, given the speed they've shown on the straights. However, I will say this is a bit. I'm a University of Texas fan. And University of Texas is a bit like Ferrari in the sense that it's got a great legacy and it's very historic and it's got all the strategic advantages in the world, and yet it's really mediocre and it screws things up constantly. So this is a class. They're very similar in that regard. They're very, but the one thing that really can salvage a University of Texas season is beating the University of Oklahoma. And to me, the one thing that can salvage a Ferrari season, winning at Monza in front of the Tifosi, winning on home turf, that can turn those Italian frowns upside down, my friends.
I like
it. Should Ferrari be favored? No, but also like last year I probably wouldn't have favored McLaren to finish 1-2.
That's exactly right. Things happen out there on the track.
Things happen out there on the track. That's why they go racing, my friends.
That's why they go racing. I looked it up. The first ever purpose-built racetrack was in the UK. You want to take a guess? Don't look at my computer. You can't see from this far away anyways.
It was in the UK.
It was in the UK.
I can't see. Anyways.
Yeah.
I'm trying to cheat, but I can't.
Nice.
Okay, it's not. I'm going to say it's not Silverstone.
It's not.
It's not Silverstone. Is it? What's the other? Gosh, there's another. What's the other really famous UK one? I'm blanking on it.
It seems to me that it would be named as if there were a bunch of lands around a brook. Brooklands. Brooklands. I don't know.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I get it. Sure. Yeah.
I got no hints for you, man.
No, that was that was. If anything, I didn't want to guess Brooklands because it felt like that can't be the hint. It can't be the hint.
That's a bad hint. That's what you're saying. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
I don't know that.
So you're telling me that Red Bull will likely be favored here, but who knows what'll happen? When do you think Verstappen's going to finally clinch this championship? Soon? I mean, I saw some, speculation and projections that it could be like with 4 races left in the season. We're getting pretty close.
Yeah,
here.
I mean, I think he probably doesn't do it at Singapore is a little close. Japan or the U.S. feel within the wheelhouse here. If we got to Mexico and he hasn't, I would be pretty surprised if he doesn't, because again, Mexico is a track that I think will favor their setup, and he's likely to be on the top step and probably wrap it up by then. I'd be really surprised if it went deeper than that.
Yeah, 7 races remain, or I guess we got 8 technically.
You'd have to
Monza.
see like a big. It's just because it's about the mathematics of it, right? So you'd have to see some bit, like let's say Charles somehow wins in Singapore and then wins again in Japan or something like that and brings home a big points haul. Maybe that extends a little later or something like that, right? But it's just an inevitability, just delaying the inevitable.
It's an inevitability, but we'll be following that P2 pretty closely, man. Me and you beefing over P2. How exciting is that? But race is this Sunday. I guess we'll be back next week. What were we saying? Wednesday of next week?
We can do Tuesday.
We can do Tuesday?
Actually, no. I would prefer Tuesday.
You would prefer Tuesday?
Because he's gone on Wednesday and I'm gone on Wednesday.
Would prefer Tuesday.
Because we're both leaving town on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me. Tuesday it is. Tuesday it is. 1 p.m. That will be the 13th of September, I do believe. So we'll get back at it talking then. Then there's a little break in the F1 schedule. I think we got
there's
3 weeks
There's
off.
like a really long break. I guess that's because the Chinese Grand Prix went away.
Right.
And the Russian Grand Prix maybe was in there. I forget what was in there, but
there were
it definitely is a weird big break.
But luckily we're coming up with some good content in the meantime. We're going to have JR back on to talk Days of Thunder, and of course we'll do our Pina podcast.
And we'll probably watch Driven again and just talk about it. Talk about all the things we did. Here's Pina Bausch. There she is, the great Pina Bausch.
What's like 3D about this documentary?
So it's like because her stuff it's like stage dance theater. There's like the way they did it was very subtle. It just adds a little bit of depth, as if you were like in an auditorium watching people on stage, rather than like things coming out at you. It's just as if the movie has like a little bit of depth to it. So you're kind of dancing in a space versus something where it's like things jumping out of the screen. There's a little bit less of that, and I think it made it really come alive.
Honestly, sounds magical.
It's great. Her work is really fantastic, and it's much more influential than you realize. You're going to watch this movie, you're going to love it, and then you're going to go about your day and see like other things where there's gesture and dance, and you think, gosh, it reminds me of that. It's because she is a hugely influential creative force in the 20th century, my friends.
I'm 100% sold on watching this movie now. I went from finding out about it for the first time about 10 minutes ago to wanting to find out which of my friends has a 3D TV so I can go be in the dance. That's what you get when you follow @Mr. Gordian on Twitter, man. You stepped your game up tweet-wise this week. So much better. Glad I didn't have to slam you for your horrible, horrible tweets 2 weeks in a row, but I was glad to see you had such a bad Labor Day. It was really great for the tweets.
It was good for the tweets, and it was just because I was delirious with disease that I was just firing off wild, uncontrolled tweets. So.
Great stuff. Follow him @MR Gordian. Follow us @No Dunks Inc. That's on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Hopefully put together some sort of video showing the sick upgrades that we did here in the Classic Factory. Please subscribe to The Athletic at theathletic.com/nodunks. $1 a month for the next 6 months. What do we got to plug? Did No Bunts yesterday. Talked about going to a Braves-Marlins game, the AL MVP, and even pickleball. You a pickler? You a pickler?
I am not a pickleball player.
You're not a pickleball player.
I'm a tennis player.
Yet.
But should I gotta hop on board?
I don't know. JD's the big picklehead around here.
Oh, you're the pickle man?
Yeah, you got to.
Okay.
It's fun.
I'm down.
Yeah.
I never said I wouldn't.
Well, let me put it this way. I'll play pickleball with you, but I'm not playing tennis.
Okay, deal.
So, yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
I would do either, to be quite honest. We've never played a paddle sport together.
Let's do like a racket round the world thing. We'll play like squash, pickleball, tennis. We'll do like a multi-racket
Badminton.
championship.
Nice. We also got Is This Good coming up tomorrow. Skeets, Lee, JD, and Mattio. That's at 1 p.m. Eastern, I do believe.
Yes, 1 p.m. Eastern.
Excellent. And we've also got some YouTube exclusives you can check out. Skeets and I talked about Danilo Gallinari and Lonzo Ball's injury. We got a video of Lee watching Serena Williams' last tennis match.
It was
while
great.
at a
I really
baseball
enjoyed
game.
it. I saw that. I did see that. I liked it. I appreciated that because I was like, I would also be doing that.
Yeah, it was the middle of the game, It was certainly
cares?
more historically important what was happening on the TV.
I'm gonna be honest. I like tennis more than baseball.
You like tennis more than baseball?
I watch way more tennis than baseball.
I saw you getting some tennis tweets off this weekend, actually.
I watch every major. I watch dozens of tennis matches a year. I can count the number of baseball games I watch a year on one hand.
Didn't you say that the U.S. Open, we're going to have a new men's winner?
We are gonna have a new men's winner.
Who's it going to be, Alcaraz?
That he looks.
Oh.
He's a killer. I mean, he looks really good.
I'm all of an Alcaraz.
Yeah. Carlos Alcaraz is really talented.
Really covers the court out there.
Yeah, Kyrgios lost last night. I think he was kind of a favorite after his, after he had been playing recently
Sure.
after Wimbledon, but he's out as of last night. I'm not sure. I like Tiafoe. I don't think he'll win, but I just like him as a dude. I think he's fun.
Great story.
Yeah, great story. I want him to win. I don't think he will.
Yeah.
Things.
I guess we're gonna have to start a tennis podcast, or at least a paddle sports
paddle
podcast.
No paddle.
All paddles. Any paddle sport, we will cover it. But for now, Clipper Bros.
You heard it here first. Have a great time. Turn up. Love you guys. Awesome.
Remember when I botched this quote last year?
Last
year. Come on, man. Be fast or be last. Whatever.